Smarties, today we're discussing a really critical event that can happen in the educational therapy process, and that is the requirement to recalibrate the learner-clinician expectations of one another and relationship. In episode 219, which we released in August of 2022, obviously we think about this at the start of a new school year, we shared an episode called Permission to Pivot. In that episode, we talked about giving ourselves permission to pivot with clients and within our businesses, and also permission to not always have all the answers top of mind. This episode is an extension of that conversation. So if you're new here and you haven't yet listened to episode 219, we have linked it for you in the show notes of this episode, or of course you can always scroll back however you listen to us in whatever app you listen to us. And so today in this extension of the conversation, we talk about how to know when it's necessary to recalibrate things. And we're also going to share some tips on how to plan for these really important conversations. One of those tips, I'll just give you a little sneak peek, pull back the curtain, is going to be to make sure you consult with a trusted colleague about the entire situation. And if you are finding yourself isolated and not really connected with other educational therapists, this is why we work with you Smarties in the capacity as business coaches. These are the types of meaningful conversations that we are having one-on-one with the clients that we coach. Remember, our mission here at Learn Smarter Podcast is to expand awareness and access to the work that we do. And part of that for us now is doing this business coaching. So if you are interested, go ahead and reach out to us at Rachel and Steph at learnsmarterpodcast.com. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Smarties, welcome to episode 328 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And today we're talking about getting back into things with your learner. So this is like... We're getting back into it too. Pulling back the curtain, we haven't recorded this is August of 2024. We haven't recorded since June, the middle of June, I think. And so we just took a little summer break and now we're back at it today, and felt like this conversation was important to have because a lot of our clients, some of them stay on through the summer, but there's a lot of summer vacation. You know, they need some time to acclimate, to give themselves a break. And it was a hard year. So now we're picking things back up. It's September. We're getting started back up and school's about to start or has already started. And it's really important, especially when a learner has taken a break and last time you saw them was at the end of the school year and there was so much stress, and getting back into what this school year is going to look like and what you want it to look like and how you want it to be different from last year. So this is really important.
And really how you want it to feel.
Yeah.
And so this is an important idea to consider, not just at the start of the school year, and definitely like pin this episode, refer back to it when you are realizing that you need to recalibrate something with a client that you're working with. So what we'll say is like, you don't have to wait until the start of a school year or the start of a semester to recalibrate the relationship. But it's something that you want to keep in mind that is an important component of the work that you're doing and the constant self-reflection that you're doing of the work that is happening in sessions.
I want to say that we give you permission to do it at any time, but sometimes you get so stuck in the weeds that you don't actually realize until feels like some sort of start of something, a start of a semester, a start of a school year, the start of the new year, whatever it is. Sometimes that's the time you sit and reflect. And these conversations can happen at any time. So if you are listening to this and it is at one of those breaking points, then this episode is definitely for you.
So let's talk about how to know when it's time to have these conversations. So Steph and I in this episode, we're not digging so much into the mindset work that needs to go into having these conversations. So we don't want to minimize the fact that this can be really hard for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to minimize that, and we don't want to minimize that. And there are certainly things that you can do to help make it easier, especially if you're not comfortable with confrontation and
setting new boundaries.
It's conflict resolution, all the childhood stuff can come up with these types of things. So we just want to acknowledge and honor that, but also share that that's not the main focus of this conversation. So we're just going to assume that we're all emotionally healthy, boundaried individuals.
Okay.
And so how do you know when it's time? How do you know?
Yeah. How do you know? How do you know? Okay. So the first is things aren't going well and it doesn't feel good.
That's a really important thing. If you have that client on your caseload, that you have to take that big deep breath before you go into that session, listen to that and listen to what it is about that learner, and also understand like the part that you're playing in it. I will say that the younger you are in your educational therapy journey, the more difficult it is to realize when you need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can be like, oh, we should have talked about this 6 months ago. But that's experience, and that is the value that you're going to bring to the next client that comes in. But if it feels like you're not making the impact that you expect, or if agreements that you and the learner have made are not working right now, that's when this becomes really important. Steph, do you want to share a little bit more about why it is so important to have these recalibrating conversations, even though they are difficult sometimes?
Sometimes there's a renewed sense of refocus. Like maybe your focus and the client's focus, they're parallel, but they're not going in the same direction. They don't have the same goal. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's just making a little switch, and that is going to make a difference, right? You just never know. And so I think that's why it's so important to really check in and use the metacognition of like what's working for you, what's not working for you as the clinician, what's working, what's not working. And then for them, what do they feel like is working? What do they feel like it's not working? And then you can talk about it collectively. What does everyone think is working and not working? And I think this is also giving a sense of like control over what they think is the goal for educational therapy. Because sometimes you lose sight of that when you get in so deep with just trying to stay on top of what they need to do, when they need to do it, how they're going to do it, all of that. It's so important to really take ownership of what it is everybody wants and needs. And that's the way that you're going to get to the end goal that you guys create together. And I think that's why it's so important.
And also there's another component why I think it's important. We are modeling this for the learners, that if something is not working for us, we're going to do something about it. That's self-advocacy. And we're going to reestablish things. And that's something that they absolutely can and should do with the adults in their lives. But we're going to do it in a calm environment, lack of contention,
having peace.
A peaceful environment. It does not have to be drama.
Yeah.
And so here are some tips to sort of help you through it. And by the way, the biggest tip is really setting up that learner-clinician relationship appropriately at the beginning of the relationship, but it doesn't always happen. And that's absolutely something we talk about in business coaching, is how to set that relationship up really well. But the first thing you really want to do is make sure you go to your staff, go to your trusted colleague, and examine whether or not your take on the situation is fair, and examine whether or not your take on the situation is fair, it's accurate, and it's reasonable. Because there's been times for both of us, Steph, where we've expressed frustration about what's going on in a session for us, and the other one steps in and recalibrates each other.
Oh, for sure. I was just thinking sometimes you run out of gas in your gas tank and you don't know where to fill it up. And so you got to go to your Rachel or Steph and you got to say, okay, how do I do this? What do I need to do? Where is it going wrong?
What am I missing?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's just that simple fix. You're so deep in it, you don't know. And that's okay. You don't know what you don't know. So even if it's a loved one or trying to find a biz bestie, maybe not in the same field, but someone who understands what you're going through. And so I think that is the best part of being able to really reflect and see what it is that you need and how you're going to move forward with it. And that's why stopping and having these conversations is so important.
You know what you don't like.
Yeah.
So you want to figure out what you want it to be and how you want it to feel moving forward. And I'll also just add that oftentimes these recalibrating conversations, it's like taking the air out of a balloon. It's like you're releasing the pressure cooker. So oftentimes the learners are like feeling so seen and so understood and so honored for where they are in their journey that it's usually such a positive interaction and it's such a human moment and it can really level the playing field.
And I want to give sort of like an example. The things that could come up for what doesn't feel good, really checking in, right? It could be sometimes it's the parent dynamic. Sometimes it can be literally day and time that you're seeing each other. Maybe it's not ideal for one of you. And then that can affect everything else. So I don't want to just sit here and say it's focused on like a personality match or anything like that. There are sometimes just external factors that can play a bigger role than you realize in the relationship.
We're always like, okay, did you eat?
Oh, yeah, for
Right?
sure.
It's like the very baseline needs. Like, how did you sleep last night? How long has this been going on? Because in the early days stuff, you and I would do back to back to back to back to back to back to back. There was no such thing as a dinner break or a lunch break. Like, we were not factoring that in.
On Sundays, I was eating 3 meals in my car. It was just too much. And that is something I look back and go, okay, that was definitely something that was not ideal for me. And I stopped as soon as I could. But I'm sure that that affected me in a lot of ways, you know, not being able to perform when I needed to, you know, so to speak, be who I wanted to be in those sessions as much as I wanted to be.
This is a really roundabout way of saying is that we have a part in how we feel about things.
100%.
And then you want to kind of go into these conversations with a plan to get agreement.
Yes.
So there's a difference between expectations and agreement. And what that means is that what you hope for may not be everything that you are agreeing upon, which can be really hard.
Let's just take grades, for example.
Sure.
Let's say the hope is straight A's.
Who set that expectation?
There, let's start there.
Yeah. But sometimes the learners are feeling that way. And
For sure. Or just feeling that that's what their parents want. And so that's what they need to get. Okay, sure. So let's say it's straight A's. That could be the hope. But the actual sometimes is, well, let's really try to do A's and B's. So it can be as simple as that. It could be more complicated. What's an example you have?
something that bothers me to my core is when learners don't tell the truth about something. And we have many, many episodes about that. And we don't like the word lying, but not truth telling maybe is nicer. And there are a lot of reasons why learners do that. But I know I take it very personally because I look at my relationship with the learner as it should be the safest relationship for failure and for making mistakes and for screwing up. First of all, I didn't create them, so I'm not having that parenting reaction to it.
Yeah.
But I do take it very personally because it's like, no, my whole approach is about wanting things to be better for you, but you're not sharing everything, so I can't give you everything that I know I can.
Right.
So an example for me is getting agreement about just the ugly truth. The ugly truth is better for me than the beautiful lie. And I will always, I had a parent say that to me once.
I think we should do an episode titled that.
The ugly truth is better than the beautiful lie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a parent in the practice say that to me once about how she felt about her learner telling her the truth. And I was just like, wait, say that again? And I loved it. So yeah, we'll do an episode on that. But getting agreement about even owning up to a lie or owning up to it after the fact because it's not their responsibility to take care of my feelings. So let's just state that. But getting agreement about what this relationship is going to be for both of us moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I like it.
So we know that these are probably things that you're considering as schedules are getting reestablished. And if you are a parent listening to this episode, we invite you to have those conversations with us. Don't blindside your clinician. Like, give them a heads up about what you want to chat about. Just like we always try to give you a heads up about what we want to chat about, so no one's left feeling anxious about a conversation that's about to happen. But these are the types of self-reflective, metacognitive conversations that we want to be having that are important ongoing conversations.
Agreed. All right. With that, have a great week.
Have a great week.